Hi, everyone. I'm Steve Prokopy, Chicago editor for Ain't It Cool News, and we're here with the second installment of Spoiler Alert for Olive Films. This edition will feature, you might have guessed from the poster behind me, the film Roar, and it's one of its stars, John Marshall, is here with me. John, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
This film I've been hearing about for a couple years, and when I finally saw it at South by Southwest last year, it came with an introduction that detailed some of the stories that went into the making of it. So I want to dig deep. I want to get graphic. Let's get all the blood and guts in there. But also, let's talk first though about give me a little history about how this film came together and what were some of the intentions of your father Noel and his then wife Tippi Hedren. What were some of the intentions that they had in making this film?
Well, first off, their intentions were to raise awareness for just the endangered species and what was happening to the animals in Africa, the plight of the African lion and a lot of the animals in Africa. So it started out, they were very early environmentalists because it was the 60s when they were going to Africa. And Dad and Tippi went to Africa. Tippi was doing a couple movies there, and they went for a couple years in a row. And in the last year, one of the years they went, after the movie was done, they went to the Gorongosa Game Preserve and just to see some animals, to go on a safari. They saw this house that had been abandoned by the game warden, and it had been overrun by a large pride of lions. So these lions were just living on the porches and on the roof. They'd hang out in the sun. And it was a very amazing thing. And so I guess on the airplane ride back, Dad and Tippi, they're both filmmakers. Dad had done The Exorcist by then. Or no, he hadn't done The Exorcist by then, but he had produced another movie, The Herod Experiment, that Tippi was in. And they said, hey, listen, why don't we make a film about a story around these lions that overtook this house, and we'll have the family in it. And because we were an acting family, we all said, okay. So when they came back for Sunday dinner, they told us about this idea to do a movie with lions. And we knew we'd have trained lions. So we all said, yeah, that sounds like fun. And we started interviewing lions, which would have been perfectly fine had the people, the animal trainers, gotten along with each other. But none of the animal trainers liked each other. None of them said their lions wouldn't get together. They wouldn't put their lions together. And they said, well, one guy had 2 lions, 3 guys had 1 lion each. And we said, well, God, we need at least probably 10, if not even a little more would be better. And so most of the trainers just said, you should probably just start getting your own. And we said, okay. And we just started getting cubs and raising them in Sherman Oaks, which is quite illegal. We found out, and nobody should ever do this at home. This was an experiment that Tippi she doesn't want to talk about she doesn't want people jumping into cages and doing these things, because we do a lot of crazy things. We learned that you shouldn't live with lions. But at any rate, we did it. We loved it. But at any rate, so we wound up starting collecting lions. And then we got one guy, Steve Martin, who was a professional animal trainer, who had a ranch. And he had a lion and a tiger and a bear. And so we kind of combined forces with him. And then he went off to do a movie with 2 of our tigers, and he never came back. And they had asked me to run the ranch for a month while Steve was gone. So I moved out to the ranch. Now I was born and raised in Beverly Hills type of thing. And now I'm out there with lions and tigers and elephants and pickup trucks and tractors and bulldozers. And Steve never came back. And so I hung out there for 2 years and prepped the thing for the movie. And then we finally got around to filming in '76.
So how long had you been living with these big cats before the shooting even started?
I think we probably had 4 or 5 years of living and raising them, because what happened is that I think we got the first lion when I was about 15, and then I think we started filming when I was about 20. So it was during that 5-year span that we were raising them. And then I also went off and did another business for a while. But then I closed that business and then went out and ran the ranch for a couple of years, and then just built that place and organized it all and built the set house and did all the other stuff and just kept raising more and more lions. And then it's funny, I went to Europe for the summer when I was 15. And I came back, it was about a 3-month trip, and I came back and we had tiger cubs. And a 15-year-old shouldn't be the voice of reason in a family. But I went to Dad and Dippy and said, well, you know, there's no tigers in Africa, right? And they go, yeah, we've changed the story a little bit and wrote them into it. They're really cute. And I go, yeah, they really are, because tigers are gorgeous. And then once you got tigers, then it's not too big a leap of faith to say, well, we might as well have cougars and mountain lions and anything else. So anything went. So we wound up with 2 elephants. We had some zebras for a while, but I traded our zebras for 10 ostriches. And then we'd rotate, so we had more extra animals that we didn't want to have all the time.
So the film has got this reputation of being, well, it says it on the poster, the most dangerous film ever made. And that's very evident when you watch the film, that people are getting bitten. And then when you hear the stories, people were severely injured in some cases. But what I found the most amusing thing about your father's original intention was this was supposed to be a G-rated, like, family film. This wasn't meant to be some sort of horror show. This was supposed to be about people and animals living in harmony. And is that right? Have I heard that right?
Yes, that was true. And now the film was released everywhere in the world, but not in America in 1981 and 82. In Australia and England, it didn't do all that well. But in Germany and Japan, it was the top grossing film. Well, so now with a lot of hindsight, which is always nice, and with what Tim League did with his marketing, you can see the different strategies. And in Australia, the tagline was, it was a ferocious comedy. And the little button had 4 cute little tiger cubs with roar and ferocious comedy. So they went for the family film because there was a family in it and there were animals. And Born Free had come out years before. So it seemed like a family film was a way to market it. Well, I think in Japan and Germany, they marketed it more like Tim League did, which is, this is really dangerous. And I was invited to the Lisbon Film Festival in September of last year. And I agreed because I've always wanted to go to Lisbon. It's one of the few countries I hadn't been to. And I show up and it's the horror film festival. And I went, wow, so now they're saying it's a horror film. So it just wasn't marketed right, I guess. I don't know, or times have changed. But also I think that the biggest appeal of the film is the realism, because people know that this is not CG. Somebody had asked me to watch Life of Pi or whatever, that movie with the tiger and the kid in the boat. And it was a girl that I was dating at the time. And she says, will you watch the movie with me? And then point out the scenes where there's real tigers. So I'm watching this movie and watching the movie and watching the movie. And she kept nudging me. She says, not yet. And I said, no, not yet. I said, I don't think they ever used a real tiger in that thing. And so, you know, it's so good to do that. But you would never risk doing that now. And the reason that it's the most dangerous film, and always will be, because I'm still a filmmaker. I'm a member of the Directors Guild. I produce and direct. And if you're making a movie and one person gets hurt, OSHA shuts you down, the DGA comes out, they have a safety meeting, they say, what are you gonna do to change it? What are you gonna make it so that this doesn't keep happening? And what were we gonna say? Oh, we should get rid of the lions because they were the problem. I mean, we were the problem too. We should have been with them, but you know, if you're with lions, you're gonna get bitten. It's fact of life.
Yeah,
that's what we learned.
When it played here, when the film opened in Chicago, it played a pair of midnight shows its opening weekend, and I begged the theater that was playing it to let me introduce it, and just because I wanted people in the audience to understand exactly the point you just made. Everything you see in this movie is 100% real. The blood, the fighting, the animals fighting, the animals tackling, all the actors running after the actors. But just did at some point it feel insane to make a movie this way?
Oh, not at some point, very often. I mean, like now in terms of the blood, there are 2 scenes that we did stage blood. It was like the 3 committee guys. Those were people that worked with the animals every day, and that was phony blood. And then obviously the guys, when the poachers get killed at the end and their body gets ripped in half, which I tried to tell Dad was a little bit too graphic. That was wardrobe, the guy's wardrobe with beef stuck in the legs. So we
Bring
didn't
the whole family. Yeah.
we never really we never killed anybody on purpose, and no one died. But
we have a lot of questions here from people hopefully that are watching right now. Let me get a couple of these. False Detective asks, how have audiences' reactions to the film differed from the original 1981 release to its 2015 re-release? Did people at the time in 81 and 82, did they understand that it was all real as well? I guess they had to. There wasn't really an option.
CG wasn't available, and special effects were just starting to become, Star Wars had been out, and there were tricks coming up. But no, obviously this was real, and because it took 5 years of principal photography and so many years of prep, we're the only movie that was on the front cover of the Sunday Times, of the LA Sunday Times, 3 times, and the movie was never released because we were covered about the flood. There was a story where Tippy got injured by the elephant really bad. So everybody in Hollywood knew this film, and every crew member knew it because practically everybody, a lot of people got their start on this movie because we had to take people that had the courage to do it, and then we'd teach them a craft. So, like our elephant trainer was, he became a sound mixer, and then 3 years after Roar ended, he went on, and I think he was nominated for Academy Award for Blue Thunder. So we started a lot of great careers.
Yeah.
Jan de Bont went on to direct Speed and Twister, and he DP'd Die Hard, and he had 200 stitches in the head. I had to take his scalp and put it back on his head, put a towel on it, and send him to the hospital. And while he was on his way to this hospital, I'm calling for backup DPs because I figured that guy's gone. And he came back and finished 5 years. I was amazed.
That's the greatest story about this, is that level of commitment. I know that not everybody was quite that.
I had 20 crew members quit in one day. I just said, forget it. And they just all left. I said, man, that's a record.
Another question is, well, you've already sort of answered this, but AJ Burke says, could Roar ever get made today? What were some of the biggest differences in the industry between when you made Roar and today?
The industry has gotten a lot smarter about safety, and it's more regulated, and there's more people watching. And even though we did it non-union, and it would have to be done non-union now. But you could never make this film again because it would just be impossible. You can't. It would be. Aside from the fact that it would be stupid, you couldn't, and especially with the amount of exposure that this movie has gotten, you couldn't get a crew. You'd have to go to a foreign country that hadn't heard about Roar, maybe, but you'd have to raise, everybody asks me, would you ever make Roar 2? And I say, no, I don't care if Roar made $200 million, or if you gave me $1 billion, I wouldn't make Roar 2. I wouldn't do it to my children. They've both been, I've let them play with the cats and stuff. Tippy, you can't, Shambhala, because Tippy does a great thing out there raising money for and rescues animals. But so I called a friend of mine that I knew had cubs, and he was a professional animal trainer, and I brought my kids out there, so I wanted them to have pictures with lion cubs like I did. But no, you could never do that today.
Well, there is a question here about if somebody else filmed a sequel to Roar, would there be, what differences would you like to see in a sequel if somebody else took up the challenge?
Well, first off, it would have to be terrible because they're not very intelligent if they're going to try it. But if somebody did want to try it, maybe if they did it CG, what I would do is try to make it where there was, Melanie and Tippy and I and Jerry, we didn't get much of a chance at acting. Let's get honest. At the end of the day, usually, we're all professional actors. We love talking about, wow, and that scene, wasn't it great? And the end of a day on Roar was you say, man, that was a pretty good day of acting. I am not on my way to the hospital. So it wasn't, you didn't get much of a, and there were no scripted anything. It was, okay, run that way, have 30 lions chase you, and if they get you down, then say something intelligent. Okay. And then you'd run and so it was like, and everything was being filmed with multiple cameras because you could never duplicate the action. And God forbid somebody gets bitten, that was going to get written in, and you better say something intelligent. unless you were bitten so bad that you needed to, get rescued. But, if they're just like drawing a little bit of blood from clawing your leg or something, then you better say something smart because they're going to want to use it.
I will fully admit I've seen the film. I saw it 3 times in the theater with an audience. I've seen it a couple times since.
It's great with an audience.
Oh, it absolutely must be seen with an audience. But I still don't know what the story is. I don't know because I lose track of it.
It's because
terrified about who's gonna get hurt next.
There was a script to begin with, and then every time sometimes Bites would change the script. It would change the direction it was taking, or we'd discover something that the animals would do that was amazing that we'd have to write in. So that's why I've never seen a movie where the animals get co-writing credits. That they share writing credits because it was really whatever they did. We couldn't get them. We tried to just pick things that they would do. Now, when you say you're confused at what the story is, it's because it's such a simple plot. It's the family comes over to visit their father, and the audience knows that you shouldn't run from them, you shouldn't play hide and seek, and you shouldn't show fear. And the whole movie is the family arrives at the house and they run and hide and they're afraid of the lions and they get chased the whole time. That's the whole movie, except for the poachers with the subplot, the committee and the grant committee, and dads, and they explain why dad's got tigers in Africa. But for the most part, it's a very thin plot. So I would like it to have a little bit more story, but the story is there. I just think that if I were redoing it and could go back in time 40 years, I'd say, Dad, maybe we shouldn't have as many scenes where we're just always running and hiding and chasing, because there were 2 sequences that we went through. It's the amphibious vehicle scene that took us 5 weeks to film it, and it's not in the movie because it was just yet another getting away from the lions, and it was just a little too redundant. The one thing I did notice, though, and it was at a screening, I forgot where it was, and I was doing a Q&A, and usually I come in for the last 15 minutes. And I showed up in the last 15 minutes, and everybody was laughing hysterically. I think it was at the Lisbon Film Festival. So I go up to do the Q&A, and I said, first off, I just want to tell you one thing. I said, you guys seem to really enjoy all the end of the movie where it's all the loving moments of the people, and they're no longer dad's come back, and we're all together, and he's introducing us to the animals and the loving moments. I said, if you just wanted an hour and a half of that, we could have shot that in 5 weeks and saved ourselves a lot of wear and tear. I said, we only put that in because it was such an intense roller coaster ride that we felt we needed a little bit of laughter and relief at the end. And I think that's why everybody laughs so hard, because they've really been scared for the whole time. I gave this, 2 of my directors, I had a production companies all my life, and 2 of my directors, one of them was living with Renee Zellweger. And I'd given him a copy of the movie. And he came back to me over the weekend. He says, oh my God, that's the best movie I ever saw, yada, yada, yada. I said, well, what did Renee think? Because I had taken Renee and Josh out to the ranch. And he said, oh, she couldn't watch it. I said, what, she thought it was that bad? He goes, no, after 10 minutes, she said, I'm sorry, but somebody's going to die and I don't want to watch that, so I'm not going to watch this. Because some people, it's just too intense.
No, you watch it because someone's probably going to die. That's the wrong way of thinking.
Why do people watch car races,
Exactly. Talk a little bit about the relationship that your father had with these cats, because I think it was on the DVD extras. Someone mentions that clearly the man had no fear while he was making this movie, but they said he took on the role of the alpha lion to these lions, and they didn't try to hurt him. They pounced him in a loving way. But just talk about, how did he get to that point? Was that just years of living with them?
Well, first off, you have to understand what you have to do in working with the animals. If you show any fear, they will kill you. I mean, they'll get you. They'll either bite you or kill you. So you have to be in charge. And if you show any fear, you could die. So you have to mentally believe that you are never going to get hurt and that you can beat all those lions up. It sounds mean, but you got to hit them in the nose. And they play rough. And so I did what Dad did on camera, I did that in the 2 years playing up to the film. But then my character was afraid. Dad's character was fearless. And so that's what he was. But that's the way my father really was. He thought that, and we jokingly say that he liked getting bitten, because it wasn't that they respected, he was the alpha male. He was in charge, but they would always challenge. And because our human skin is a lot softer than the lion's, they bite him just like they bite other lions when they're figuring the shit out. So Dad got bitten through the hand on the very first day of filming. Dad got bitten in the leg really, really bad on the staircase scene. He got bitten by Donnie really bad in the neck, so bad that this lion was dragging Dad out of the bathtub. And all the animal trainers or the handlers, had been taught never interfere with anything with Dad, because he would always say, I wasn't in any danger. So I was always the one that saved Dad, because I got yelled at more than any other crew member. But I figured that it was better that I got yelled at, because he really couldn't fire me, because how are you going to replace me? I knew the animals better than anybody, and I was the actor. But he was very intense, and he was fearless, and he was amazing with the animals. To the point, I think he took too many chances, and there were ways that, and I was like a little bit of a buffer between Sanity and Dad. And so Tippy and Melanie would come to me and say, hey, I don't really feel good. Can you help me with this? And then I'd go to Dad. And I remember one time I said, Dad, so Melanie's afraid in this one scene. So I think here's what we can do to make her feel comfortable. Dad says, that's stupid. Go tell her not to be afraid. I go, Dad, fear is in people's head, and it is real to them. You can't tell them to not have it. So that's unrealistic. And he goes, well, that's stupid. Just tell her she's got to do it. And so I went over and I said, okay, Melanie, I'm going to be right behind camera. I'll be right there. So, and then Tippy and Melanie we would always try to get in scenes together, because Jerry could defend himself. I felt that a woman needs a little more protection than a guy.
You mentioned earlier the flood. Can you talk about, as if the production wasn't crazy enough, this thing happens just before you're about to wrap. Talk about what happened and what had to happen after the flood.
We were about 95% done, and we had torrential rains in February of 1978. And somebody stupidly upriver had redesigned a road rather than going down through the little creek, built it straight across and put some culverts. Well, it caused a huge dam that wasn't meant to be a dam, and it wasn't structural. So when that thing broke, we had a 6-foot wall of water come down and just destroy the ranch. I mean, buildings floating into our set house, editing equipment, our film was floating downriver, 15 lions and tigers got loose. The sheriff shot 3 of them, including Robbie, our main lion. And if you know anything about a flood, when it comes in from a river flood, it just brings a lot of dirt with it. And the house had 6 feet of soot everywhere. And the editing equipment was destroyed. A lot of the other equipment was destroyed. And the lake was filled in with sand, and it was 6 feet higher. I mean, it was devastating. That was probably the only time that after we saw it a couple days later, when we after I restored the power and everything else to the houses and we got water back, we had a meeting, and I just said, I just don't know. Maybe this is meant to be, but by then we had sold all 4 family homes, a big 600-acre parcel out by Magic Mountain. We'd borrowed money from everybody that we could borrow money from. Not finishing wasn't an option. We had to finish. So we just kept going on.
Yeah. Let me get to another question here from someone who's watching. From Starman15317. How did working on Roar affect your acting from both a traumatic experience to just general principalities? I think he's asking you if you suffered any PTSD as a result of making this film, but how did it impact you as an actor?
Not really, because I had started acting when I was 5, and then I quit when I was 15, and then came back into acting for this. But in doing this, I found that I really liked production a lot. And so when we would shut down filming, which happened quite often because we'd either run out of money, somebody'd be in the hospital, it'd snow, there'd be a flood, there were fires, I would go off and start producing commercials. So I started a production company. So I just quit acting. I didn't want to do acting anymore. So it didn't really affect me that much. I know that it wasn't a great job acting because it wasn't an actor's movie. It was a stay alive movie.
Let me get another one here. Oh, well, here's an obvious question from Galahad. Do you have any pets now?
I don't have a goldfish. I love saying that. No. And it's so anticlimactic. You know, what am I going to have? A silky terrier? What, I could get a pit bull, I guess, or something. But, you know, no, it's if you've had these cats and my baby tiger, who I raised and had for 20 some years, he popped 4 water beds. He lived with me for the first year and a half growing up. A dog is kind of I don't know. I love animals, but I'm also very allergic to them.
Would that include the big cats? Were you allergic to them or no?
Tippy, Melanie, and I, every day we had to start out taking a contact because otherwise we'd be sneezing throughout the whole day. Yes, we were allergic to all of them.
So here we are some 30 years after the film was originally released, 30 plus years. And I'm just wondering, now that the Draft House Films sort of rediscovered it and did this wonderful job of restoring it and getting it out there, remarketing it, did you ever anticipate this film becoming this cult classic now?
Absolutely not. Now, I've been trying to keep the word out there, and I have the movie that is available, and I did a documentary on the making of it that I sell on the website. But I never really thought that, I was hoping that it would eventually, and I kept trying. Did I ever think it? I never thought it would. I thought it would come out on video. I never thought it would be in theaters. And I heard about it. My son sent me an email, and he said, Draft House Films is releasing Roar in theaters, Dad. And I sent him back, what's a Draft House Films? Because nobody talked to me. My daughter has the rights to the movie, and she signed a distribution deal with Olive, but I didn't know Olive did a deal with Tim League. Well, Tim called, of course, like somebody would. He calls Tippy and says, hey, we're releasing your movie. Can we fly you down to Austin? And he says, we found it on the holy fucking shit shelf, and it's the most dangerous movie ever made, and 70 people got hurt. Tippy didn't like the marketing at all because she's trying to say that people and animals shouldn't be together. And her whole charitable thing is you go out and you pay $50 and they take you on tours. Well, all of a sudden you got this guy saying 70 people got bitten out at Tippy's place. Well, would you go out there? So it was bad that way. But so Tim called Tippy, she declined, called Melanie, she declined. And so he just decided to go without anybody. Well, when I heard it was coming out, I called him up and I said, hey, Tim, I'll do whatever you want. I'm promoting the film. And he goes, oh. And so he flew me down to Austin, and I couldn't make it. I had come out of retirement and was producing a Northrop Grumman commercial with James Mangold. That I was shooting at a sewage treatment plant in San Pedro at night. When I got the invitation to South by Southwest that it was the secret screening, I couldn't make it. I have been dying to go to South by Southwest. It'll be 40 years on September 27th of this year. It'll be 40 years from the date of the first filming. And so I've waited for more than 40 years to get to go to one of those things, and I wasn't able to go.
That's actually where I saw it, was that very secret screening. Yeah. That's the first time
I was invited. I can tell you it was March 25th because I was shooting. I remember my shoot day with James.
There's one sequence in the film toward the end that I'm still not sure how you did it. The scene where I believe the poachers are killing some of the animals, and it looks so real. How did you get those shots?
Well, what happens in about once or twice a year, you have to draw blood. You do blood tests on the animals. It's like an annual physical. And but sometimes you can take blood without anesthetizing them, and then there's some that you just absolutely have to anesthetize them. You always try to not do that. So what I did, and I did a lot of the veterinarian work and a lot of shots, a lot of the maintenance stuff. we had real vets come in and do other stuff. But so what we did is we needed to do blood tests on those cats. So we just picked the cats that we needed to do blood tests on. So like when the tiger gets shot and then she falls off this little hill and then rolls in the sand, and then she looks up with this lost look in her face and there's blood. Well, what it was is I gave her a shot, and 10 minutes later when she's almost up, I got her on the edge of this. It was only like 6 feet. And I put soft sand down at the bottom, and I was laying on the ground with her. I was laying hiding so the camera couldn't see me. And just when I could tell she was just about ready to pass out, I just pushed her over, and she went bump, bump, bump. And then she had this lost look because they're not used to being stoned. So they're just confused, and it looks like they've been killed. And so that's what we did to do that sequence. We would never, ever hurt an animal or risk any animal getting hurt.
Oh, no, I never thought you would, but I was just really curious about, because it looks like they're genuinely out of it. So
I mean, it does. I mean, I've been in theaters around the world, and people get really mad about that. And it's like, I want to jump up and go, it's phony, man.
Another reader question here. Crunchy Socks wants to ask about your acting career. Specifically, what was it like working with Burt Reynolds at Hooper, which is a film I actually just saw down in Austin recently. So, but yeah, talk about working on that film.
I didn't work on it.
You didn't work on it. This person's an idiot. Okay, I should have looked that up.
If you try to find John Marshall on IMDb, there's like 12 of
I'm
me.
sure.
And I've got credits in 4 different categories, and I've never bothered to correct it.
Okay, Crunchy Socks, you're a fool. Okay, well, let me ask about what you're working on now. Just what are some things that fans might want to hear about, things you've got coming up?
Well, one of the things that I'm working on that I'm really excited about is, well, first off, I finished an Animal Planet documentary about 2 weeks ago. They haven't told me the air date, but I think it's going to be this summer. And the owner of the production company told me, he says, John, if you have any e-commerce on your site, he said, you better get ready for it. He says, this is going to show in 90 countries and 50 million people usually see these things. So you better have something to sell when you get traffic there. And I got like t-shirts and I got some other stuff. But what I decided is, I was talking to Tim League about it. He was going to do it, but then he closed that division. And I want to make a coffee table book, because normally production stills, you get, you use 3 or 4 production stills for a poster, and that's about it. Well, we had a still photographer with us for 11 years. We have the most amazing pictures of people and animals you will ever see in this lifetime. I have them on my Facebook page. Roar the Movie if you go to Facebook, you can go to Roar the Movie and see some pictures. But I'm working on this, and I think it's never been done before. So I get to name it, I think. And it's called a narrated picture book. And what it's going to be is you can buy a digital on iBooks and on Kindle. You can buy all this it's nice coffee table layout book. But what you do digitally is every time you go to a new picture comes up, I start talking and explain the picture. And I say, in this picture, and I give funny stories about it. So it's like it's almost its own separate whole thing that is probably going to be an hour and a half long if you listen to everything I say. But I'm very excited about that. I'm excited about the Animal Planet thing. And then otherwise, I'm just doing BBC also might do a documentary on Roar. But I hadn't planned on Roar taking over my life at this stage. I mean, I'm an inventor, so I've got other businesses that I have to do. But Roar has always been, because it was so intense, I want to share this with the world. And I think I'm finally making enough progress. And I want to go back to something you said, though, about PTSD, because I was talking to one of the cameramen who was in the documentary. And I asked Alan, he said, we were talking about this crazy things we did. He says, John, you remember, because Alan Queso, he's a DP now. He taught me to be an assistant cameraman and to pull focus. Well, that was because I could pull focus with one hand, and I was really good at guessing distances. But I had a stick in my other hand. I could make sure we didn't get bitten, because there were never enough people to protect the camera crews. So I got sucked into the camera department by that. But Alan was saying, he says, John, we had PTSD. It was just that wasn't diagnosed at that time. And really it was. There's a key grip that for 10 years, and I know this for a fact because I did bump into him 10 years later and I tried it. If you walked up behind him and tapped him on the shoulder, he'd go like this. I mean, that was because that was the reaction. If your lions bite you, you got to smack them. So this was really traumatic for that guy. He shouldn't have been on the film for that long.
I was going to ask, are you still running into people that worked on that you could?
Yeah, I still talk to some people. I had lunch with the elephant trainer who went on to do Blue Thunder in a sound mixer. And then, but I bump into people every so often. They're kind of falling off now. In 2002 or 2004, I staged a 25-year reunion. And I did a half-hour documentary on the making of Roar. And all I did was I set up 4 interview stations and invited as much of the crew as I could find. And I had them all tell their stories because I didn't want it to be about my stories or Tippy's stories. I wanted their stories because I wasn't everywhere. And some of the stories they told were amazing. I have 24 hours of footage of it too. So I'll probably recycle that. I call my making of Roar, I call that Roar 2, which people can find on my website. And then Roar 3 is the Animal Planet one. And then Roar 4 will be the BBC one. And then Roar 5 will be the book.
All right. Did you, you mentioned earlier from a purely technical standpoint that you had pretty much every scene had to be shot with multiple cameras. Was that a challenge because just not seeing the cameras from the different angles? Because you can tell that there's so many cameras on the same shots.
Oh yeah, absolutely. So what it was, this was a typical day. You'd figure out where the camera's going to go. So everybody picked their camera positions. Then we had the fence crew, and then you had the camouflage crew. So you'd put up fences as much as you could to contain whatever areas you could. Then if the cameras were shooting into fences, then the tree crew would have to come in and baling wire and tie trees onto the chain link so that they could disguise it. And then it was just, there were times that you wouldn't even get a shot off in a day because there was so much prep time of doing it. And then you finally wind up and animals is a big part of it. It's like there was one scene that there was 15 full-grown lions that are supposed to be chasing me. And I asked Dad, I said, Dad, can we do it without Donnie? And he said, no, we need every lion. And I said, okay, it wasn't worth the fight. But it took us about 4 hours to set up. And so you put 15 full-grown male lions in a small enclosure so that they want to get out. And then you do this 3 hours of prep work with because the cameras, they're all seeing each other. So you have to camouflage the cameras from each other. So then when we get ready to film, all the cameras are aimed at me. And you sync up all the cameras just with it, because there were no slates. We didn't have walkie-talkies in the movie. There were a lot of things that that I would change. But then I start running and acting afraid, and the lions are chasing me. Well, the lion, one's playfully tripping me, and I'm acting afraid and everything. Well, Donnie came, and he was about 6 inches away from biting me in the ass. So I turn around, and I smack him in the nose. And my father yells out, "You ruined the effing shot!" And I go, but I didn't get bitten. And he goes, "You weren't going to get bitten." I said, "Judgment call." I said, "Let's put the lions back. And can we do the next scene without Donnie?" "No, we need Donnie." Okay, I might do the same thing again. He yelled at me all the time because I was the only one that stand up to him. But I wasn't going to get bitten if I had control of whether I was going to get bitten or not. And I was going to control not getting bitten.
Right. Is the scene where was it you that jumps into the barrel of water? Is that you?
Yeah, and what was really stupid is that was my idea.
That's a great scene, though. How did you shoot that from inside the barrel?
And I think I liked the scene because it was 120 degrees, so I figured I'd be cool all the day. Well, there were a lot of different. That sequence probably was 2 weeks of filming. So we had to build one barrel that we had optical glass put in that you could shoot in, so you could see me in the barrel. Then we did a lot of filming, from the roof, from behind my head, with all the lions coming over. But There was one lion that I got 56 stitches in the head, and it took 6 guys 25 minutes to get the lion off of me. And that happened very early on in the filming. And that lion continually tried to bite me. And Donnie kept trying to bite me. So I kept asking Dad if I could do the scene without Tanguru and Donnie. And I think it was Donnie was the one that was problematic. But so I'm hiding in the barrel full of water. And so what I would do is I would duck down and I would look up. And I could tell which lions are which, because it's really important to know which lion's which, because some like you and some don't. So if there were good lions up there, I would quietly just come up, and then I'd give them good reactions, and then I could do some acting and shit. But I told my father I wanted it to be protected back here, because what the lions try to do is they try to get you to start looking around like this, because then they can get you. So as long as you can just do this and know you're protected here. So I said, I want to be protected there, and then otherwise I'm fine. But so when I'd go down, well, I'd see Donnie there, and I'd go, ah, man, he's waiting to bite me again. I'd just sit there, hold my breath as long as I could. And when I run out of breath, I would pop up really fast, and he'd jump back, and then he'd come in to bite me, but I'd already be underwater. And my father would get so mad, and he yelled at me. And I used to smoke stupidly at the time. And Dad goes, how can you hold your breath for so long when you smoke so much? Well, I never told him it was because of the bad lions. I had all my tricks of not getting bitten, because I was the one that was the most successful throughout.
And one of my other favorite sequences is the one, I think it's your brother that climbs into the refrigerator.
Yeah, what kind of jerk hides in a refrigerator?
Hey, he fit, you know. But then I feel like in the making of that's on the DVD, he basically says that the only reason he didn't get bitten is because the refrigerator fell over and trapped him inside of it.
Because because he did, well, you don't want to close it because then you could die inside. But we didn't want to close it because we wanted the fight back and forth. So Jerry's trying to keep the door shut. The lion's pulling, and the lion finally got the door open and was reaching in to grab him. But then the refrigerator fell over, so Jerry was right. If it hadn't been for that refrigerator falling over, he would have been clawed up pretty bad.
One of the stories that Tippy tells in the documentary also is about Melanie getting her face scratched. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that sounds like that really seemed to upset a lot of people when it happened.
Well, yeah, because, you know, when you're talking about, you know, especially Melanie was maybe 22 or 23, you know, I mean, you're talking about a young woman that's beautiful and that you love, and that's her career, is her beauty. To see that happen because of just a movie, but it was a small cub. I mean, it wasn't, you know, I'll bet you it wasn't more than 50 or 60 pounds, but it just reached around behind her and clawed her, you know, and she could have lost an eye. And Tippy has a similar story where Hitchcock, who, and I'm sorry, but Hitchcock told Tippy that they were going to use phony birds. And when she got on location, that was a lie. And they were throwing birds at her when she's in the attic. And one came this close to her eye, and she just kind of lost it. Well, Dad told her, oh yeah, we get trained lions. And then, but she knew, we were all raising them in Sherman Oaks. So she could have backed out at any time. But, you know, I mean, to see your kids do it, that's why I say I wouldn't do this to my children. There's not enough money in the world to risk the lives of my kids and put them in jeopardy like this, because I am still, and everyone is still amazed to this day that nobody died.
Was there any temptation, especially with the family members, any temptation to back out of this at any point? Or do marshals always finish what they start? Well,
You couldn't back out because there was too much at stake. But a funny thing that I talk about, I think I mentioned it in my documentary, and Animal Planet didn't choose, they had too much information to convey. But what a lot of people don't know, and I told Tippy, and we do talk about it in my documentary, because I say, Tippy, you know, with freeze frame, because when we started shooting in '76, they didn't even have Betamaxes were just coming out. So we never thought people would freeze frame anything or replay things. So there were a lot of things that we thought we could get away with. Well, but one of the things Melanie didn't want to do the movie in the beginning. And so we used her best friend, Patsy, because Patsy was her best friend and she was always over at the house. She knew the lions the next best to Melanie. So Patsy played Melanie. And that was from September 28th through mid-December, and then we stopped for a Christmas hiatus. And we all got together for Christmas, and Melanie goes, oh, I made a mistake. I think she was like 17 or 18 or something. And she was a young kid. She goes, oh, I should have been in the movie. And Dad goes, yeah, then we'll fire Patsy and we'll just reshoot some scenes. There are a couple scenes in Roar where you can see Patsy. If you look at a wide shot from behind the elephant, when the elephant destroys the boat, and the family's just sitting there trying to figure out what they should do, Patsy's there. But it was a wide enough shot that we figured nobody would ever see it. And there's also a shot when you were talking about camouflaging cameras and fences and things. There's a shot that bothers me to no end that you can see an animal hand where he's standing up and he sees that the camera's seeing him and he just lays on the ground real quick and it got left in. But there's some continuity flaws, but over a 5-year period of time, of course there would be.
The last question I wanted to ask you was there ever any issue with any kind of authority, like animal control authority, while you were making this? The fact that you were just throwing these cats together that in nature did not belong together, and throwing humans in, more importantly, with these cats. But was there ever any issue with the law in making this film?
No, actually, because we had such a great reputation for taking care of our animals so well that, and we have federal licenses, state licenses, county licenses, and city licenses. And we had endangered species permits. We had a great breeding program for tigers. Animal control used to call me up and say, hey, John, we're working up new rules of what size lion compound should be. Could you come in and meet with us and work it out with us? So they actually came to me. And also animal control used to call me every so often they called me to help them out once because there were 3 chimpanzees that got loose in Bel Air, and they figured, hey, shit, if the guy can do lions, man, let's call him. And so I went down there to help them with these chimps, but they got it before I got down there.
Yeah. John, first of all, just thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This is a real treat.
I love talking about and sharing this movie.
I think it shows. We also want to thank Blu-ray.com for helping out with this. It's BLU-RAY.com. Again, John, and Roar is out on DVD and Blu-ray from Olive Films, and this is the second episode of I forgot the name of the show. Oh, spoiler alert. There we go. John, again, thank you so much. Take care.
Thank you. Have a good night. Bye.
Bye.